Welcome to another episode of NBM Talks, a series of the Narrative-Based Medicine Lab, where we speak with individuals who are working at the intersection of literature, medicine, and health. Our guests are writers, clinicians, scholars, artists, and advocates who are pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the field. Together we discuss how we can engage with narrative-based medicine principles and practices in creative and diverse ways. We hope you enjoy this episode. Our guest today is Rory O'Sullivan. Rory O'Sullivan is a family doctor who practices comprehensive family medicine at the Garrison Creek Clinic in Toronto. In his 12 years in practice, he has worked in emergency rooms and hospitals across several provinces and served for nearly 3 years as a community physician for the Poplar Hill First Nation in northwestern Ontario. He is an assistant professor of family medicine at the University of Toronto, where he teaches reflective practice as part of the portfolio course for undergraduate medical students. And he's currently enrolled in the Advanced Certificate Program at U of T's Narrative-Based Medicine Lab, i.e. with us. His written work has been published in medical journals and magazines, including The Intima, Pulse, and Canadian Family Physician, and he is a past recipient of the CFPC Mimi Davinsky Award for History and Narrative in Family Medicine and a long-list finalist for the International Amy McRae Award for Memoir. His latest publication, Walking on the Ground, is a novella written under the pen name Eamon Rourke, and it's now available on the Kobo and Kindle platforms. Rory joins us today at the NBM Talk Studios in Toronto. Rory, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm flattered and a little bit uncomfortable as well. I enjoyed the podcast and feeling a little bit maybe underqualified, but happy to be here.
Well, we've decided that you're highly qualified, and we're looking forward to everything you have to tell us about. Maybe starting with, you could tell us a bit about your background, how you came to be a physician, and how writing fits into that story.
Sure. Well, I was born on a dark and stormy night in 1980. Well, I'll skip ahead a little bit. I grew up in small towns on the East Coast in Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, and my father was a family doctor. He's recently retired, and so I sort of grew up around medicine and sort of understood what was involved and understood it very much as a vocation. Wasn't a sure thing for me though. I was very interested in medicine, and I was very interested in journalism as well, specifically newspaper journalism. I had done a couple of sort of summer internships as a journalist during my undergraduate years. Newspaper for your younger listeners, newspapers they're sort of like a flat book where the news of the day is written down. There's photos, and you can get it at the store. And
kind of remember.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I worked for the weekly sort of community newspaper in Nova Scotia that served the Shelburne County and the Tri-County area. And all the way up to when I was actually applying for medical school, I applied to journalism school as well, and really wasn't sure until the last minute which way I was going to go, but ended up in medicine. But obviously did have a very strong interest in writing fiction and nonfiction up until that point. Just in terms of how writing sort of fits into the story, I think the writing during my medical training, medical training really was sort of all-consuming, and I sort of fell out of the habit of writing for a long time. It almost became, I had a sense that it was sort of a zero-sum game, and that if I was spending time writing, maybe I was not spending time doing things that I should be doing in terms of my professional training and responsibilities. And it wasn't until later when I was out in practice on my own, where I had sort of started having a lot of kind of formative experiences in a short period of time. I was doing a lot of work in the emergency room, and so seeing a lot of traumatic things and doing some kind of TV doctor stuff, and then having these experiences of going into northwestern Ontario, and so having that's sort of an adventure from that point of view, and then also having my first real sort of substantive experiences with Indigenous culture and the Indigenous world in this country, and this was before the Truth and Reconciliation Commission finished in 2015, and there was really, you know, not the same attention to Indigenous issues that I think there is now. And so it was, you know, quite eye-opening. And so suddenly having more complicated thoughts about this country and its colonial history and how the institutions work and how the health system works and all these things. So it was in that period that I kind of started to write again, sort of mainly for myself.
Were you writing reflectively, or writing to kind of process those experiences, or writing creatively based on those experiences, or how did that go for you? How did it work?
Yeah, a bit of both. I think some memoir, some nonfiction sort of short pieces, some kind of, I guess, sort of fictionalized experiences that I'd had. I suppose mainly as sort of it's sort of in two pieces. One in terms of trying to process these experiences that I was having, and also just having the impulse to write down what were really compelling stories that I was, you know, coming across. And so it was sort of, you know, chipped away at that in the background for a few years, and then the next kind of formative step, I guess, in that process was probably actually taking the one of your workshops in 2018. I think it was at St. Michael's Hospital, and that was the first time I was sort of in a room with, you know, medical people, people in healthcare who were all writing and taking it seriously and writing well, and sort of first got the sense that there was maybe a bit of a community around this, and also had the sense that started to get an inkling that some of these things might actually be publishable in some form, and so that sort of brings me to kind of where I am now.
And kind of a narrative-based medicine question, but I'm curious to hear your take on it. Do you see your writing contributing to your work as a physician, or how do you see your work as a physician contributing to your writing? How do these two things interact for you professionally and personally now?
Yeah, it's something that has evolved for me. I would say, you know, for a long time, I saw writing as almost a bit of a guilty pleasure, or something that I was doing on the side, as I said, that was a hobby, but not meant to be a focus of my sort of professional work or my life's work. A- And I admit that coming into narrative medicine, I was very happy that I could go to a writing workshop and get professional credits for it, and not, you know, not have to sit through another lecture on diabetes medication or whatever it was. But I was skeptical of whether it would really make me a better doctor, a better diagnostician, a better clinician in a kind of a concrete way. And some of that has to do with something that I still struggle with a little bit, which is where the boundaries should be between my sort of medical professional role and my role as a writer, or this other side of my life. And that's something that's, I think, still evolving a little bit. But I appreciated the reflective space that it gave me. But I think what I have taken away over time is, I think, doing the narrative medicine work gives me a sense of perspective and a sort of a humility about what I do, in terms of when you start to see patients as characters in the story that that they're telling you, or when you start to see yourself as a character in their story, it takes you out of that sort of algorithmic, you know, diagnosis and treatment kind of mechanism, I guess, and helps you to see the whole person, as we say. But it sort of gives you that perspective of not overestimating your importance, or enhances the empathy, I think, of the encounter.
It's sort of such an interesting way to think about it, where it's like the word narrative, instead of it being about us narrating or co-creating, is seeing ourselves as characters, seeing ourselves as embedded in narratives. I don't think, you know, I've been kicking this ball around for a while, but I don't think I've thought about it in quite that way before. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it reminds me, early on, one of my experiences in the North, I remember having a particularly um, frustrating day in the office of I was struggling with a particular patient who didn't seem to be taking my advice about their medication. I think it was for high blood pressure, and I was sort of complaining to the nurse that I didn't seem to be able to connect or seem to be able to get through. And this was an experienced nurse who sort of said, "Well, people have chaotic lives, and we see them through the lens of what their health problem is, and that's our priority, but it may not be their priority, and so we have to understand it in that context of everything else that's going on with them, and I think that's in simple terms, that's sort of an extension of where I see narrative medicine fitting into to my practice now, is helping me bring that lens."
Thinking about narrative in another sense, published a lot of short pieces, short reflective pieces. You've worked on a longer recent publication under a pseudonym. Could you tell us a little bit about maybe your recent and current writing and what you've been working on recently?
Yeah, the most recent publication, that's right, is a novella called "Waking on the Ground" that I've self-published as an ebook under the pen name Eamon Rourke. This is all new stuff to me. I mean, writing something of that length, but also writing something that's a bit arm's length from the narrative medicine work that I've done. But certainly, it's informed by the work that I've done there. But it's a little bit more of a stretch. It's a little bit more fun. It's a psychological thriller. It's maybe a little bit more commercial in a sense. So I was just sort of, as I say, stretching and trying out some of those things.
Can I just ask you about that quickly?
Yeah.
The stretching and the different genre, is that what led you to publish it under a pseudonym, or was there other reasons?
Well, that's part of it. Yeah, I think part of it is sort of having a little bit of fun with a different persona, but yeah, part of it is again around the question of where those boundaries should be in terms of, I think it's different if you're writing, clearly medical related pieces. But writing, I think, does come obviously with some intimacy or some vulnerability. You're really putting yourself out there, and that's not necessarily a vulnerability that I bring with me into the clinic. But these days, our patients have access to everything that we write and everything we publish, and so I have mixed feelings about where to land on that in terms of how much of that side of my life I should be sharing in a professional context. I don't know the answer there, but for now, this seemed like a way to put a little bit of distance between me and work that maybe wasn't directly related. It was, again, just sort of learning the ropes of the publishing world, the self-publishing world a little bit. It was my first time working with a professional editor, Jane Warren, who you're familiar with, is fantastic. So just that whole process was a lot of fun. It's a kind of a learning experience, and a success. We've sold tens of copies,
Double figures.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic. Would you say that the narrating voice, the person holding the pen, is a little different from when you're writing as Rory O'Sullivan?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, I think it's a little more. I don't know if playful is the right word, but I think the idea was to. I did a summer workshop a couple of years ago. I did the Humber School for Writers did their creative writing workshop, their summer workshop, and I ended up in a workshop with Antonio Michael Downing, who's a great writer. I think he's the host of The Next Chapter on CBC now, actually. But so he did a great workshop, but he had a lot of emphasis on really pushing us to drill into why we write and why we're interested in the things that we're interested in, and sort of giving ourselves permission to be interested in the things that we're interested in. So it was a little bit of a push to kind of just broaden the scope of the things that I'm sort of interested in writing about.
That's actually a great segue into our next topic or my next question. Many of our listeners, they're you 10 years ago, they're beginning, they're experimenting with their writing. What advice would you have of that kind for them to practice or improve with their craft, at their voice?
Um, it's a good question. I think, one thing I would say is that obviously everybody's different, but I think things change over time as well. I think, what works for you now might not work for you in 6 months or 12 months. So I think keeping an open mind from that perspective is helpful. The big jump for me, and it might sound obvious, but the big jump for me was letting other people read what I was writing. Because again, there is that little bit of vulnerability. I'm not a sort of a naturally extroverted person, and so you are putting yourself out there. But I think you really have to treat it as um, in the with the goal of making your writing better, because you do have, no matter how many times you revise on your own, you do have blind spots. That will be quickly pointed out to you when you let other people, hopefully gentle people, read your work. So, whether that's a group or whether that's friends or family, I think that as much feedback as you can get. And I think, when you're starting to submit for publication, I think every time you have a piece rejected, because you will have them rejected, is an opportunity to try and get feedback and revise. And you're kind of constantly rewriting from that point of view. I also think something that this is maybe a little bit unconventional advice, but it's something that I've struggled with was, finding time to write or finding opportunity to write. And I've found what's been helpful from that point of view is actually letting yourself off the hook a little bit and lowering expectations a little bit. I mean, I have a full practice and teaching responsibilities and small kids and so on. And at the times when I've tried to have a regimented schedule for writing, it's invariably been life has gotten in the way, and that creates frustration and it sort of takes the fun out of it. So I think you have to be flexible from that point of view as well, which is different from saying, wait until you're inspired and the conditions are perfect to sit down and write. You have to push yourself to do it and look for opportunities to do it. But don't beat yourself up about it if you don't get to it every week, kind of thing. So that has helped me. But looking for those little opportunities. I saw an interview recently with Dan Brown, the novelist, and he was talking about when he wrote the Da Vinci Code, he wrote it in his parents' laundry room with his laptop up on the ironing board. And so the conditions don't have to be perfect. But I think for me, not being too regimented or too structured about it is helpful. I'll often have a scene or a few lines rattling around in my head for a few days or a week or longer, and then when I do sit down to write, then I'm kind of ready to put something substantive down. So
I think you're getting at something that we see at the lab with some of our participants, in terms of both the practicalities but also the nature of sharing the work, which is, it's okay to be bad at this. It's okay to fail. It's okay to stumble and get it wrong a few times, which, well, you'll correct me if I'm wrong. I get the feeling that for a lot of people working in healthcare or with a very disciplined, regimented healthcare education or healthcare background or healthcare responsibilities, it's very hard to look at things that way.
that's right. It's definitely a shift. It's I think in medicine we tend to be very, high achieving, goal directed people who are used to structure. And so you do have to push yourself out of that comfort zone a little bit, because this is a very different animal. Yeah.
One place where maybe you can be disciplined or try to be high achieving is sending stuff out. And well, I guess there's a lot of rejection as well, but having a system or having, I know people who have spreadsheets or they have all their submissions on wallpapering their wall. You've had a lot of success sending work out as both reflective and creative pieces. Is there anything you can tell us or any tips for our listeners about pursuing that?
Yeah, well, I think so. Again, I think some of it is managing expectations. I think when you're submitting for publication, you really are playing the long game. You're going to send something off, and then it's going to be 6 or 8 or 12 months before you hear back, and you 9 times out of 10, it's probably going to be a rejection. So I think be prepared for that. I do keep a list of everything that I've submitted and how many times and to which places, and then I do sort of try and keep in the habit of trying to send something off, maybe once every month or 2 months, when I can, but trying to do it on a regular basis. Um, and then I think I do have a sense that, when you've had success with one um, sort of venue, you can go back to them again, and when people get familiar with you, it does become a little bit easier over time. And again, part of having those groups and those connections is also you'll hear about opportunities, you'll hear about contests, or you'll hear about anthologies and things that you might be able to contribute to that you might not otherwise come across. So there's opportunities there as well.
I try to do that as well. I used to get very envious whenever I saw someone else's publication, and now I try to take it as, oh, I should try that as well. Maybe it'll go well for me.
Yeah.
Imperfectly, admittedly. I do think it's really helpful to do it in that way, that, like you said, sort of monthly, or to be keeping track, or even as well. I try to always have something out, so always have something that is not just on my desk, or I'd be that with a writing group, or be it with a friend, or more formally for publication. So at least like a lot of things, it's harder to start again, or start again once you've stopped. But if you're always maintaining it, then you have momentum.
Yeah, and I would say, once in a while, go back and look at the things that haven't gone anywhere. Go back and look at you just out of interest, for Waking on the Ground. And I would say, again, this is the other side of maybe not having more of a structure to my writing schedule, is that it took me 3 years to write an 80-page book. But the way that started, I had some ideas about some themes that I wanted to explore and so on, but I was really blocked about how to start. And I found an old cardboard box with a few short stories in it that I had written in kind of junior high, and sort of took one and thought, well, I'll just rewrite a chapter here, and I'll punch up the language, and I'll see where it goes. And that sort of started me off on the whole story. And it didn't end up using the first chapter, but you never know what's going to come out of those old pieces that you have stuck in a box somewhere. So it's always, if you're looking for motivation or inspiration, it's always helpful to go back and look.
Yeah, there's a reason you wrote that down originally. There's a reason you didn't throw it out,
That's
even
right.
if you're not aware of it. So
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. It's amazing what you can find. Okay, I have a couple more questions for you. One I didn't sort of give you any preparation for, so you can just think about this one if you like. I'm curious if you have any literary idols or models, or things that you return to, or that you're reading, that are your kind of exemplars for this kind of for your creative work. But also, if you need to think about that one a little bit, where can people pick up a copy of Waking on the Ground, or where can they find out more about your writing and follow your work?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. In terms of sort of literary models, I mean, I think in medicine, I'm certainly sort of drawn to some of the physicians who've written very accessible, sort of relatable pieces. I'm thinking of people like Gillian Horton, um, Vincent Lamb. Um, More broadly, I tend to read. When I'm looking to relax, or when I'm reading for fun or for comfort, I don't tend to look at the humanities page of of JAMA or the New England Journal. I tend to read more fiction. People like Michael Chabon and uh, John le Carré, Michael Crichton, I think are I mean, obviously these are sort of big blockbuster novelists, but I find that people who write sort of entertaining fiction with maybe just a little bit of an extra layer of a bit of an intellectual piece to it. I think the, not not much. Not very highbrow all the time, I would say, but still, I think worth reading, and it inspires me to write in a way that I think is, engaging on multiple levels. So it's entertaining and compelling and readable, but maybe has some broader themes or some more intellectual themes to share.
And in terms of where to get a copy of the book, or just to follow you online.
Yeah, so I have a website, which is roryosullivan.ca, which is it's sort of a level above a MySpace page in terms of its design, but it's all my stuff is there. There's the book is available on Kobo and Kindle. Online, and my most recent publication was in the Intima, the Journal of Narrative Medicine from Columbia University. So that's out there in the ether as well.
Lots of places to find out more. Rory O'Sullivan, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great to chat with you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, check out many other episodes. And if you're interested in learning more about narrative-based medicine, visit us online at narrativebasedmedicine.ca for more great content and to explore our upcoming offerings.